Hello, everyone, and welcome to Rich Sports Talk. We have Connor Hughes from SNY joining us today. Connor, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, man. Thank you so much for having me on.
I know he's a busy man. He's got the NFL schedule release coming out later today. So we're going to dive right into it first with the Giants rookie class. And again, Connor's been doing a great job covering it. If you can check out all of his updates on X. Connor, what's really stuck out to you about this Giant rookie class, especially through their rookie camp?
Well, I think that's the weird thing is that the Brian Dable kind of he took an approach that was very similar to how Robert Saleh did with the Jets, where the rookies don't really do too much. So you're not going to see, they don't do any, the Giants in general don't do any 11 on 11 drills. The only teamwork is 7-on-7s, and the draft picks don't take part in that. So as far as like Abdul Carter, Scatabo, guys like that, where you kind of were hoping to see what they'd look like in a team setting, they are not involved in any of those aspects of practice to be able to make legitimate observations as far as, oh, this guy looks this, that guy looks that. The one guy who did take part in all that stuff, though, was the quarterback Jackson Dart, and he's somebody who the Giants wanted to involve in. Obviously, in their perfect world, Russell Wilson plays out the entirety of this season. The Giants make a playoff run and all that fun stuff, and Jackson Dart gets a full season to develop. So any kind of reps that he can get throughout the offseason program, rookie mini camp, OTAs, training camp, they are incredibly valuable to him and his development. So we did get a chance to see him perform a little bit. So overall, rookie draft class observations, unfortunately, there aren't too many, but the quarterback, Jackson Dart, did take the field, and I actually thought he looked pretty good.
Well, speaking about Jackson Dart, and again, I know it's limited reps seeing what he can do, but you have unfortunately covered the Jets for well over a decade. So
Yeah.
you've seen a lot of young quarterbacks come in and out of the building. Has there
Yeah.
been certain attributes, maybe the way he's handled himself, maybe the way he's conducting himself in practice that have stood out to you that maybe stand apart from other rookies that you've covered over your previous years?
Yeah, he's very mature. I think that
Mm.
that's a pretty obvious takeaway just to this point. He's got a really good head on his shoulders. I think he's doing all the right things publicly, and it sounds like he's doing all the right things privately. You know, it was uh, he called all the guys on offense that were going to be taking part in those 7-on-7 drills and stuff together on a bus just to go over what they're trying to do, which I think sent a pretty good message. And talking to Brian Dable about it after practice, he made a comment that, like, yeah, well, that's what the good quarterbacks do. That's what or he said that's what the quarterback's supposed to do.
Hmm.
And I was like, okay, Brian, but I imagine that not all quarterbacks do. And he smiled and he goes, the good ones do, though. And then he went into a little bit more of an elaborate answer. So he's doing things that the Giants want to see their quarterbacks do, but maybe haven't necessarily taken place in recent years. So that's kind of the off the field stuff. On the field, again, it's rookie minicamp. He's practicing with guys that are probably going to be I would say very unlikely that they're going to be in the NFL this coming year, let alone playing in the NFL this year. But so you kind of gotta judge things accordingly. But I will say more than anything from a rookie, he looked calm. He looked comfortable and he looked in control. You know, the deer in the headlights look that I'm so used to seeing from so many different quarterbacks that I've covered throughout my career. Whether guys drafted high like Sam Darnold and Zach Wilson, or a little bit lower like Bryce Petty, Christian Hackenberg. The comfort there that you saw from him was absolutely noteworthy, and something that stood out to me. So this is a brand new offense that he's learning. A lot is made about quarterbacks that have played with Lane Kiffin and what they're able to do once they get to the NFL level, and how much they're able to absorb and what they're able to say, do, that kind of a thing. I would say that I came away pretty impressed with how, even in an elementary vanilla version of what Brian Dable wants to ultimately run, Dart looked pretty comfortable those 2 days.
And I think that's a very encouraging thing for Giants fans because one of the big things that's been going around is the John Gruden video with Dart and the snap
Yeah.
count. And I think that's a little bit unfair because so many quarterbacks at the college level are doing
Mhm.
that right now. So, but one thing, speaking of college, I wanted to talk to you about is this whole offseason. It was basically what quarterback were the Giants going to draft? And of
Mhm.
course, Shadur Sanders was a name that was thrown out around a lot. We know about the pre-draft interviews. But the question I would have to you from your sources around the Giants, was it always Jackson Dart when the season ended for college football last year? Was Jackson Dart the kid that they fell in love with, or was it kind of 1A and 1B and Dart elevated himself throughout the pre-draft process over potentially Shadur and other potential quarterbacks?
Yeah, I actually had someone tell me that during the season, like while the Giants were playing the season, There was a chunk of time there where Shador Sanders was like their 1-1, where they believed that Shador Sanders was an elite level prospect, and that was early, very very early on in the prospect. I'm talking before pro days, combine interviews, just from watching college film, the report that they had done and completed on him the year before. The interactions that they've been able to have when they were at Colorado practices in season and things like that, that they really liked Shador Sanders. Um, Heard that all the way through December. And then I think towards the end of December, when they started kind of getting a little bit more reports and intel on guys like Cam Ward, because remember, they tried very aggressively to move up with the Titans to get that pick where they would have taken Cam Ward. When they then made their attempts to sign Aaron Rodgers and trade for Matt Stafford, I think they started falling out of love with Shador Sanders and some of the warts and things that started popping up, which were one of the reasons why he fell in the draft the way that he did. I think that those were things that the Giants uncovered. So no, I don't think this is one of those things where Jackson Dart was 1 or Jackson Dart was 1A, 1B. I think that Shador Sanders was very high on the Giants board, at one point even higher than Cam Ward. And then as they really started to finalize their evaluations, that started to change. And I do know that there were people in the Giants building that did prefer Shador Sanders over Jackson Dart. This wasn't like it was a completely total unified decision, but it became very clear that this was Brian Dable's guy. That when it came to Brian Dable and his offensive staff, he wanted Jackson Dart. That was his number one guy. He fell in love with him, loved his interview, loved his mental, loved his physical, loved everything, and looked at him as a guy then and said, basically, I can make him into an all-world quarterback. This is what I need to have my offense be successful. I don't care about the warts that people talk about with Jackson Dart in his game. I believe in him, and I know that this can work with me. And then you heard in some of the videos that the Giants have released, because again, I talked about this a few days before the draft. I had reported that Jackson Dart was Brian Dable's guy, and that's the one that he liked more than anyone not named Cam Ward. He wanted Jackson Dart. And it became very clear when the Giants did their own in-house documentary on the draft process. Some of those clips that came out, Joe Shane's sitting there and talking to Brian Dable and made it clear, like, okay, we're taking him because this is your guy. We're taking him because you want him. You believe in him. The coaching staff loves him. Like, this is their guy. We're going and we're getting your guy. That's exactly what they did.
The only thing with getting, quote, your guy is, and again, I think that the Giants handled the draft beautifully, getting Abdul Carter with the third pick and trading back up for Jackson Dart. Was there any worry if they passed on Dart at 3? Again, I predicted they were going to trade back in the first round, whether it be Shador, whether it be for Jackson Dart. But once we got past the Steelers at like 21, was there a sense that they really felt urgency, or did they feel pretty comfortable that they could get up and get Jackson Dart, or that some team would come up to maybe take him away from them?
Yeah, I mean, that was the kind of thing is you had the teams that you knew needed quarterbacks, and that were the Browns, although I heard after they traded back in the draft that they were not going to trade up for any quarterback, that they were basically content on waiting to see if one fell to them, which is what happened with Sanders and Gabriel, or they were just going to kick the ball to next year and they were going to draft a quarterback in what is supposed to be a much more quarterback rich class next season. There was obviously concerns, which is why the Giants had conversations with multiple teams about moving up. I mean, they talked. I don't know if they talked with Seattle. I know they talked with the Chargers about going up. I think 18 was the highest, but then they were pretty confident in their intel that the Steelers weren't going quarterback. So I think the one team that they were internally concerned about were the Rams, that they thought internally that the Rams were going to take a quarterback. I can tell you firsthand that that is not the case, that the Rams were never going to take Jackson Dart, and the Rams were never interested in Jackson Dart. The scouts and their front office did their homework on Jackson Dart, but the Rams never even extended that to the coaching staff. Like, it's not like this was their offensive coaches and Sean McVay were crunching the film for hours and hours and hours on Jackson Dart, which if they were interested in him, their offensive coaches would have watched the film, and they really didn't do that. So I think the Giants just kind of one of those things about why wait. Like at this point, it's going to cost you what, an extra third round pick to go get a guy that Brian Dable believes is going to be a franchise quarterback. So at that cost, you go up and do it. You just don't risk it anymore.
Right. And especially when this is basically a make or break year for them, it makes sense to just give those assets to get the quarterback. So let's move it over to the Jets. And one thing, I've had a lot of Jet fans follow this channel, and a lot of Jet fans have speculated on the draft. Buffalo had jumped the Jets multiple times at 41, at 72 to get a defensive tackle. Do you get any sense from the building that they were disappointed that the Bills took a defensive tackle there? Because I was kind of content that they liked the players that they picked with Mason Taylor and then the corner from Florida State. I thought that they were very happy with those picks and the value, but was there any sense maybe from the building that the Jets were really looking for a D tackle in that range, or do you just get the sense that they really weren't that actually invested in getting a D tackle in this draft?
No, I don't think that they weren't interested in a defensive tackle. I think the Jets are very much in a position here where they were going to let their board talk. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like there was a number of spots that the Jets could have gone, and if you look at what they compiled with their draft, they I don't want to say they quote unquote drafted for need because that gets a really negative connotation, but they really did take the best player available at a position of need. And there were a number of different spots that could have gone. I mean, receiver, tight end, interior defensive line, offensive line. I mean, there's depth concerns, things like that. I mean, they could have even gone, like you said, they could have added another pass rusher, interior defensive line, things like that. I mean, the Jets have star power, which I think is something the fans really cling to, whether it's the Garrett Wilsons, the Sauce Gardners, the Quinnen Williams, the Brees Halls, but they do lack a lot of depth in places where they do really need to fix and address some of the depth concerns. So I really don't believe that there was ever a position where they were like, oh my God, they just took our player. Oh my God, we're screwed here. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it was ever anything like that because I think they really were like, okay, would we have taken a defensive tackle here? Absolutely, we would have taken a defensive tackle here. The defensive tackle is gone. We're going to pivot to something else that we need and continue to try to build out and round out this roster.
And I think that they did a very good job of rounding out the roster. And again, maybe they're higher on Leonard Taylor the third than maybe the fan base is. But one other thing I was going to say with this Jets draft, which I found very interesting, was obviously the Arian Smith pick was a intriguing one for the Jets. But do you get the sense that there's certain players from the former regime that could be on the roster bubble just because they don't fit, like a Malachi Corley, maybe a Quantez Stiggers? I mean, they were drafted last year by a whole different regime. But do you think this coaching staff's going to let them have an opportunity to compete, or do you think that they're going to be eventually phased out?
Yeah, the only one that kind of raised my eyebrows was Brees Hall,
Mm-hmm.
and that was the one where when Aaron Glenn talked about him the way that he did at the owners meeting, I'm sorry, that was one where I was like, huh, that's interesting. And from my understanding at the NFL draft, the Jets never shopped Brees Hall, like they were never calling teams and being like, hey, this guy's available, but it was known and made known by one team that I specifically spoke to that said, yeah, we were made of it. We were made aware that Brees Hall could be had for the right price. Kind of one of
Mm-hmm.
those things. Now, I took it as a Jamal Adams type thing where it was like, if someone calls, we're going to answer the phone and we kind of need to be blown away. Again, it wasn't like the Jets were going to trade away somebody that was a pretty dynamic player like that.
Mm-hmm.
But other those other guys you mentioned, like Stiggers, that's a late round pick. Like you're just kind of
Yeah.
seeing what you can get out of him. You know what I mean? He's a good hustle guy. He's really good on special teams. I don't know if anyone ever really viewed him as a guy that was going to be a starting corner in the NFL. I think it's when you're drafting someone like that, where you did, it's kind of like, well, what's the best you can get? Like what you're just trying to get an NFL player out of him, and anything more than that's kind of a real good thing. Corley is a fascinating one because from people that I talked to over there with the last regime that let out, and because obviously these guys they're still getting their hands on him. There were some maturity things that needed to be ironed out with Corley. It's not necessarily a skill thing. It's not a talent thing. He has all of those and everything you want for him to be a really successful player. It's a maturity. He needed to mature somewhat, and it never necessarily happened with last regime with Aaron Rodgers and things like that. So he never really got on the field. But if he does, and he kind of has been humbled a little bit, I think that you can expect something better from him because I'll tell you, I'll never forget. I was sitting next to Janae Coakley, who I work with, the press box where he infamously fumbled before the goal line and dropped the ball at the 1 yard line. That was really the first time he touched the ball. And aside from the whole drop, I'm not ragging on him for dropping the ball. It's whatever at this point. But I remember when he got the ball in his hands and he took it around the side, all of us in the press box, Janae and I, and then even someone below, it might have been Andy, were like, who the hell is that guy? Like, well, like that guy's quick. Like you see it because you just saw the speed. Like you saw the physical gifts immediately. So there's definitely talent there for Corley. He just needs to put it all together. And I think that this regime, again, new coaches, new voice, new leadership, fresh, clean slate for everybody. I think if Corley has an opportunity to really take advantage of that.
Right. And I think like with Jet fans and watching Corley last year, you saw that play work, even though we know the result was the fumble at the 1 yard
Yeah.
line. But then they never went back to that well again, which was frustrating.
I
And
think it ticked some of the coaches off when it was
mhm.
basically like he didn't show a lot of remorse after the game where
Oh,
and when we
okay.
talked to him where it was like, yeah, well, I've never done that before. Why would I do it again? Like there was no like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm embarrassed by that. It was kind of just like, I've never done that before. I'll never do it again. Like, okay, well, Deshaun did it. Like it was like I just think again, I think there was some he needed to grow up some. And again, a whole year, an off season, kind of being humbled by not playing, and now you've got a new coaching staff, and it's very clear that Aaron Glenn is a no bullshitter. Like he is
Mhm.
not going to take anything from anybody. And the days of maybe being a player led team in terms of like there was a lot of leeway given to these guys by Robert Saleh and significantly more given to them by Jeff Ulbrich. Those days are over. I mean, it's very clear that this is a Parcellsian like approach from Aaron Glenn, and he's not going to let them get away with some of the stuff they did. So he's got a great opportunity here, talking about Corley to again clean slate and learn for and take advantage of it with this new coaching staff.
Right. And I think final question for you, because I know you got a busy day ahead of you,
Yeah.
especially if we're trying to find the positives for all the Jets, but you've covered all these different regimes. I believe you started with McCagnon, correct? Was your first when we first
So
started covering?
technically, so I started covering the Jets when I was in college, actually.
Mm,
And so technically, my very first regime, although again I was part-time, like I was in college, so I would literally leave I would ask my professors if I could leave class 15 minutes early so I could get from Monmouth to Florham Park to be able to like get there in time for locker room. I would mostly get to them for the end of the coach, and then I would definitely get there for locker room. And so like I used to have to literally leave class early to get to do these things on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then I would cover home games but not road games because obviously I couldn't travel, I was in college. But that year was the end of Idzik and Rex Ryan, so I was there for that. Then I was there for Mike McCagnon and Todd Bowles. And I started full time in 2016. I was part time 2014, 2015 while I was in college, graduated, and then I went full time. So full time cover was McCagnon and Todd, but I got a little bit of Rex and Idzik too.
you got basically the taste of all this 15 years, unfortunately. So,
Yeah, I got it all. Yeah, I've got it all.
so I guess for Jet fans, because I feel like this fan base right now is at such a low point. And basically, I say this channel is free therapy for Jets fans. What are some of the things that you see with this new regime, with Muji, with Aaron Glenn, that you think stick out and you think could really work and help turn this team around to maybe not be a playoff team in the next year or two, but at least be respectable and be a team that this fan base can be proud of?
Yeah, this is unfortunately like a cop out answer. But to like it's on, and this is honestly the truth. And I've talked to people over at the Jets literally about this. Um, I'm done answering that question. And the reason why I say that, and I mean this is no disrespect to you, I've got no idea. Like
Yeah.
so you just named like everyone I've covered, right? So I've seen Rex and Idzik. Then I saw Todd and Mike. Then I saw Mike and Adam. Then I saw Joe and Adam. Then I saw Robert and Adam. And now or Robert and Joe. Then I saw Ulbrich and Joe. And then I saw Ulbrich and who was I forget who the interim general manager was. Like I've seen so many different people, and every time somebody new comes in with Todd, with Adam, with Robert, with Jeff, it's always the same thing of like new blood, energy. This is different because of this reason. This is different because of this reason. And for so many years, this entire time, it's all failed and
Mhm.
it hasn't worked. So I don't know if this is going to work because I'm going to be completely transparent with you. I've never covered a team where it did work. Like I covered the
Fair.
Eagles when they made the playoffs and made their Super Bowl run in 17. I covered the Giants in 2019 where they made the playoffs, but that was such a weird year because that was such a bad football team that like just like every possible good bounce you could have of a football the Giants got in 2019 and made the playoffs as a result. Like they were one of the least talented teams in the NFL that year and they somehow made the playoffs and won a playoff game. Like so I can't even compare it to that. So I don't know firsthand from covering what a playoff contending team looks like. I don't know what a truly successful head coach looks like. I've never
Mhm.
seen it. So unfortunately, like, yeah, why should Jet fans be optimistic? I can tell you, like, yeah, he's a disciplinarian. He's a no nonsense guy. Muji seems like a really good guy who's paid his dues and comes from like a good background, worked with Paxton and Denver, who's somebody who's really highly regarded, all of these things. But like at the end of the day, it's about one thing, it's about one thing only. Like you'll know Muji is the right general manager you'll know Aaron Glenn is the right head coach when they field a good football team that wins games. Like,
Right.
that's it. Like, that's when you know. You're not going to know based off of anything I tell you right now. You're not going to know based off anything that happens in training camp or rookie mini camp or OTAs or anything like that. You'll know the Jets are going to be a good football team when they take the field and win games. And until then, like, I'm done guessing because I don't know. I have no idea. Is Aaron Glenn a different person than Robert Saleh? Yeah. But guess what? Robert was different than Adam, and Robert and Adam were different than Todd, and Robert, Adam, and Todd were different than Rex, and you can throw all these other guys in the mix, and it didn't work with any of them. So it's
Right.
like I'm at the point, man, where it really is just win football games. Just win football games, and that's when I'll turn around and be like, this is different because look, Aaron Glenn acts like this, and this is how it resulted in. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, and I get where you're coming from in this fan base. But the final question I'm just going to give you, and again, you could,
I
because I
hope
know
I
you
didn't
covered
come
all
off as
this.
like being a dick or anything. Like, I don't want
No,
to
dude,
sound, I don't want to sound mean on my
no.
phone.
Look, you're honest, and until base, I think a lot of Jet fans feel the same way. Until they see the results on the field, every year you come in with hope, and again, I think there'll still be some hope. But until you see this team win football games and look like a competitive team and not embarrass themselves, I do think that until they show that, you can't put faith in them until that. But I'll finish off with this because I'll give you a little bit easier or funner question because again, we just went through the whole draft season. You've covered the draft for the Giants, for the Jets. Like, what is your favorite draft story? Whether it could be draft day, leading up to the draft. Like, you probably have so many stories over your multiple years of covering the New York teams.
Like, feel good stories are the Lorenzo Malden. I mean, he didn't work out, but when he got drafted and was crying and and then you kind of learned about his experience and why he felt the way that he did and all that stuff. He was a draft memory I'll always recall. Going into draft day, the year that they drafted Sam Darnold was a wild one because the Jets that morning were fully expecting to turn in their draft card with Baker Mayfield's name on it. And I remember Mike McCagnon telling me that they didn't start getting wind that Baker was probably going 1 and not going to be there at 3 until a couple hours before the draft. And then they were like, holy crap, that means Sam Darnold's going to fall to us. And then Mike was telling me how he started panicking, thinking the Broncos, because John Elway was obsessed with Sam Darnold, that the Broncos were going to try to go to 2, jump the Jets and take Sam. But then they tried to go up to 2, but no one could get Dave Gettleman on the phone because Dave Gettleman was like, I'm not trading with anyone. I'm just taking Saquon Barkley. So watching that play out in real time and then learning the backstory of it all was a crazy draft story. Trying to think of other ones, man. Like there's been so many. The COVID year was wild just because you're covering like the draft during COVID and everybody's at home. And I remember watching the draft with my wife because before every other draft I ever covered, I'm out of the house. Like I'm at a team's facility. So like I was like, yeah, this is kind of what it's like to watch the draft during and to cover it and work it and all that stuff. So and I was doing it right from home. So there's a lot of them, but those certainly stick out in my head, just kind of being put on the spot there. Those are the ones that kind of stick out to me. I'll probably think now, as soon as we're done with this, I'm going to think of like 27 more and I'll text you like, oh, I remember this too. And I remember this. I remember this.
Well, we're looking forward to having you on again later. Again, I know
Dude.
you got a huge day today. NFL schedule release again. Hopefully, I know we're seeing the leaks coming out right now. It looks like the Jets might be hosting Pittsburgh.
That sounds like that's true. From what
Might be hosting. But the real question is, will the Steelers have a former Jet quarterback at the helm? That's going to be the big one.
I believe ultimately they will. I think I'd be surprised if Mike Tomlin and the way that organization works were content with Will Howard and Mason Rudolph, I think is the quarterback. I think they know they're getting the Jets' old friend over there in Pittsburgh soon.
Could be worse. Could have the Saints quarterback room right now, though. That's nuts. But again, thank you so much for joining us, Connor. Again, you can check out Connor on X, his links below, and of course, always on SNY. Thanks, Connor, for joining us here today.
No problem, man. Thank you for having me.
Have a good one. All right, guys, that was Connor Hughes. We talked the Jets and Giants draft classes. If you have any questions, make sure to use that super chat to jump to the front of the line, or if you have any comments, please let us know in the comments section. You can always check out our live streams on the channel. But also, guys, don't forget, we have our community page. So for this week, I'll give you a little bit of a breakdown how the show's going to work. We're going to have 2 shows. We're going to have one tomorrow, and we're going to have one Friday. Tomorrow, we will be reacting to the Jets schedule release. how it comes out, how the Jets schedule impacts them, and how it will determine potentially their season. We already know one thing is certain. The Jets will be playing week 6 in London, hosting the Denver Broncos. Now, the other big thing, too, we will be doing later this week is we have a community page right now on YouTube. And if you check out the community page, you can actually vote on the next video you can see. Because again, this channel is as much about me as it is you. I want to create content that you, the fans, want to see. And right now we have, what video would you like to see next? I gave you a couple different early ones, but the leader in the clubhouse right now, which we'll probably do on Friday, will be the top 5 Jets X Factors on the 2025 roster. Those are guys who are going to make or break the Jets season, guys that are kind of on the bubble right now, that if they have great seasons and really work under Aaron Glenn, could make a huge impact. But if they don't work, it might not be too pretty. But again, that's on the community page. So if you're new to the channel, hit the like and subscribe button so you don't miss any of that content. Again, the chats are open. So if you have any chats you would like to get in here, and if you want to jump to the front line or just make a donation to the channel, use that super chat feature. Again, Connor Hughes joined us. If you haven't seen it, you can go back. We talked the Giants, we talked the Jets, and he had some really great insight on the Giants. And my favorite from that conversation was the Shedeur Sanders one, which was, did the Giants really think Shedeur Sanders could be their franchise quarterback? And it sounds like up until the end of the college football season, Shedeur was at the top of their radar. But again, as we see in the NFL draft process year after year, it all comes down to meeting in person, how you carry yourself in a room, how the pre-draft meetings went. So again, Connor with some great insight, where Jackson Dart, when the season ended, wasn't at the top of their list. In fact, Cam Ward was. They tried to trade up for him. That didn't work. Shedeur seemingly was plan B, but they fell in love with Jackson Dart. And Brian Dable has said that this is the quarterback that he really wants. And again, with the Jets, we went through the Jets draft history. We talked about some of his famous stories from draft night. And of course, we talked about this year's draft class. And one of the big things I asked Connor, and you can go check out the full details earlier in this video, and again, we'll post shorts from this earlier, was he did confirm a theory that I had, which was a lot of Jet fans on the channel. And again, I understand because of the optics with the Bills jumping in front multiple times to take defensive tackles. And I said, look, were the Jets devastated that these D tackles went? Because talking to the fan base and talking to you guys here on the channel, it was clear you guys were upset. You thought that these were guys that the Jets really wanted, but Connor said no, they were playing it by the board. They were going to take the best player available, which it seemingly they did. And they also really did a good job, I think, of getting good talent, but they weren't devastated. They weren't necessarily going to go out and get these fancy defensive tackles at that point. But the other thing that I thought was interesting, too, is, again, this was a draft that Connor, I think, agreed with me, too, that this was really a fill-the-holes kind of draft. It was basically plug in those holes, make sure that they are all covered. And, again, this wasn't necessarily the, quote, sexy draft that I think some Jet fans were hoping for. But this was a draft where they got a lot of needs and a lot of depth, which I think will be very good. But, again, Connor brought up a good point. Aaron Glenn, I think, is doing a good job changing the culture. But until we see the results, unfortunately, we will have to wait as Jet fans to see the final results. But again, all that is earlier in the video. You can go check that out. Again, Connor Hughes did an incredible job. Follow him on X. His link is below. And you can always check him out on SNY. Again, guys, we have more videos coming later this week. We will be reacting to the NFL schedule tomorrow, so make sure you tune into that. If you're joining us after the live stream, you want questions, you have anything you want to talk to me about, make sure to comment it on the video and I will get back to you. And again, check out our community page, guys. That's part of the great part of this channel. We give you the option to help pitch the next videos. I gave you 4 ideas, and it looks like Friday we will be doing the top 5 Jets X Factors for the 2025 season. Again, thank you to Connor Hughes for joining us here today. Thank you guys for watching as always. Until next time, I'm your host, Nolan Rich, and this is Rich Sports Talk. Thank you so much for joining us here today.